What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 33 preview. So we're going to go through the big questions and hot topics before the deadline tomorrow. And we're going to start off with Leicester because there's a lot of questions about best options on free hit, best options long term. Should we worry about Barnes now? Which defenders are nailed? So I'm going to try and cover it all while talking about Leicester in more general thoughts about their fixtures and stuff like that. So in theory, on paper, a double game week in 33, one in 36 and one in 37, as well as just all-round good fixtures to end the season, should mean that we're looking to heavily bring in Leicester players and, of course, have them on the free hit this week as well. The problem is, as we know, Leicester in Europe, they won last night as well, so they're now through to the semi-final of the Europa Conference League, and that presents a problem for anyone that you want to bring in long-term. So I've got the fixtures listed here. I'm going to go through them in just a second. One thing as well that I wanted to touch on, because it was pointed out to me by FPL Foxy on Twitter yesterday, that myself and probably quite a few others talking about the fact that Leicester have got not a lot to play for in the league, but actually they could still finish top 7. They've only played 29 games. So for West Ham, for example, they got 3 games in hand. Now, even if they win all those games, they'd still be a couple of points behind. So I don't think Rodgers is going to come out and write the league off, but I do think behind the scenes, like, Europe is much more important, I would say, right now than the Premier League. Doesn't mean they're going to give up, doesn't mean that they can't get top 7, but it still looks pretty difficult. But it is on, so we shouldn't say that there's nothing to play for in the league whatsoever, okay? In terms of the fixtures, obviously their quarterfinal last night against PSV has happened. I put that in for context just to show you how many games they've got in quick succession with very little turnaround. So straight away, the Newcastle game in 33 is only 3 days later. I think there's a high chance that Maddison gets benched. Like, there's a few people saying that maybe he starts both games and comes off early in both games. I think it's much more likely that he comes on in one of the games and starts the other one. He could get maybe 100 to 110 minutes, so he is probably a better option than he normally would be. But from my perspective, I'm not really rushing out now to go and get him, because the problems don't just stop there, okay? So it's 3 days since their European game. Straight after Newcastle, it's only 3 days until they play Everton. Then it's 3 days until game week 34, and that game is before the semi-final. Now, that game against Villa, I'm not saying they'll completely rotate because there's 5 days rest until the semi-final, so you don't want to give players too much time off either. But there is obviously going to be, that same worry about whether they're going to play. Smack bang in the middle is not really a fixture you'd want to necessarily play them in anyway. It's Spurs away. And that really is hardly any rest from the semi-final. So you'd imagine there's going to be similar rotation there ahead of the second leg, unless they happen to have smashed the first leg, but it seems unlikely, right? I think they're playing Roma. And then for game week 36, you've got exactly the same problem as you've got now. There's only a few days between the end of the semi-final. So whether they win or lose it, there's only a couple more days until they play Everton at home again. So I would argue game week 33, the first game of 33, the first game of 36, and probably game week 35, you could see a lot of rotation and possibly some in game week 34 as well. So it's all well and good having all these extra fixtures, but if you ain't going to play all of them, you've got the same amount of minutes, if not in some cases probably less than single game week players. So this kind of puts me off Leicester, not completely, but definitely much more than it would have. And to be honest, this fixture run obviously hasn't changed in terms of league fixtures. It's just because of the European fixtures being added in there. So in terms of who's the best options, like if I just bring up the FPL page, I think the best attacker probably is still Maddison. I think he's playing really well at the moment. He took his goal really well last night. In terms of creativity, he probably is the best player in that squad. So he's a pretty good option for 7 million. But I would worry a little bit about whether to even include him on a free hit, to be honest, and especially to bring him in going forward. Like, if Chelsea win their FA Cup game, then surely in game week 34, where Maddison's got Villa at home, may or may not be rotated, Mason Mount would be a better option. Mount would probably play in 35 as well. And then obviously they've both got the double in 36 anyway, where they both could miss a game, to be honest. So I'm pretty kind of put off bringing Maddison in, if I'm honest, but I still think he's probably the best attacker. Dewsbury Hall is more likely to play more minutes, but I think his attacking threat is fairly low. I think a lot of people are big on him because he scored recently. I don't think that's going to happen that often, but he is what he is. He's 4.4 million. He's a very good enabler. If you have to play him in the doubles, if you need to set up a bench boost in game week 33, 36 or 37, then he probably is one of the players that is quite a good option for that bench, because he's not going to block you from having triple Leicester. I don't think between now and the end of the season, most people are going to have triple Leicester in their team. So I do quite like Dewsbury Hall, but he's not someone that I'd want to play week in, week out. I think the bench boost comes into play. That's probably it. If you've got Barnes, I don't think I would panic right now. He came off after 45 minutes last night, not for a rest because he didn't play very well. But in some ways, if you think that he's now not necessarily first choice 11, arguably that gives him a bit of a better opportunity to play in the Premier League, because he won't be in those European first 11s, right? So actually, in a strange way, he might even be better for FPL right now. I don't think I'd necessarily bring him in, but if I had him, I wouldn't be panicking. I would definitely be playing him in the double in 33. See how many minutes he gets, see how he performs, and then go from there. Because he's a decent price at 6.6. In defence, I just think it's a no-go zone. I really do. Like, it's quite clear who the first choice back four is, I think, based on who played in Europe. It looks like Castagna left back, Ricardo right back, Fofana and Evans. That is the first choice back four. Justin's going to get some minutes, and Justin probably will play the first game of Game Week 33. Will he play the second one as well? I don't know. He's probably got the best chance of that happening, but it's not guaranteed. Soyuncu could play, Amati could come in and play to give Evans and Fofana some time off. Thomas could play left back. I just don't think it's worth going there. I don't even think I'd go there on free hit, to be honest. I'd rather have maybe a Newcastle defender in there, Cancelo or Laporte, who are almost certainly going to play one game. I won't say guaranteed, because Man City have got to play their FA Cup game before they play against Brighton. So there is some concerns there. But I just don't think I would put a Leicester. The problem is, for me, is not even the rotation. They're not even that cheap. Do you know what I mean? If James Justin was like 4.4, 4.5, maybe you'd risk it. And it's not like 4.9 is like a huge difference. But once you getting closer to that 5 and above, you kind of want someone a bit more nailed on. Justin potentially might have the same thing as Barnes, where because Ricardo looks like his first choice for Europe, maybe Justin will play a lot more of the Premier League games. So if I was going to risk someone, he is the one that I would risk. But it is that. I do think it's a risk. And then the other obvious option is Schmeichel. I think Schmeichel, if you're going for a defensive option, is the best option. But obviously he takes up a goalkeeper slot. You have to use a transfer on a goalkeeper. So it depends on what your kind of strategy is and stuff going forward. Just really quickly to round it off with Iheanacho, again, he's first choice right now, but Dak is going to take some minutes off him. So that is the be-all and end-all with Leicester. The fixture run's ridiculous because of the European games. There's going to be rotation because there's such a short turnaround. I don't think anyone is nailed apart from maybe Schmeichel, maybe Dewsbury Hall, possibly. Madison, yes, very good, but he's going to miss minutes, and you just got to be prepared for that. If I was going to take a punt on any defender, probably be Justin. Okay, so last couple of days we've seen that Lacazette hasn't been in training. That's what's been reported, and he was asked, or Arteta was asked about it in the press conference today, and he said, obviously there are private reasons that I can't comment on. We will see if he's available. There's a good possibility that that's the case. So he said it was a kind of a private reasons he can't comment. Then he was questioned about it and said there's a good possibility that that's the case. I don't think that necessarily really helps us that much. And what to do with him is pretty tricky. So I'm going to talk about my own team, what if you're on Wildcard 34, and general thoughts around it. So if you're on Wildcard 34, I think you probably cash in, unless you've got loads of other players to deal with. I think you either get Ronaldo, just go for that high upside play, or you just downgrade him to someone like Chris Wood and spend that money elsewhere, and then who cares for next week because you're just going to wildcard out of it. That seems to me the best play. What if you don't have your wildcard? Well, if you were thinking about selling him anyway soon, I would probably just do it this week. I just think he missed a couple of training sessions. It's a good possibility. I mean, how would you rate that? Is that like 60%, 70%, 80%? We just don't know. So I think if you're going to sell him anyway, I'd maybe just bring it forward. Chelsea's the second game anyway. My only worry over doing that is, as I spoke about earlier on this week, he has kind of underperformed his expected goals a little bit this season, which we haven't actually seen in previous seasons. So I do think there's goals in there. I know Arsenal fans get really frustrated with him. He's not someone that has got necessarily that eye for goal, or seemingly doesn't have it. But I do think there was possibly goals coming. But I think if you're going to sell him, you probably sell him anyway. And you probably go to Chris Wood. I don't know if there is a better option this week to go for if you're not going up to Ronaldo or you're not going up to Kane. There's not too many players around the kind of 7.5 to 9.5 million price bracket anyway. Like for my own plans, for example, I'll just show you, right, what I was thinking. I was thinking about getting rid of him next week for Pukki. Now, the one reason I quite like Pukki is, one, I'm probably going to play one forward most weeks going forward anyway, hopefully anyway. And he does have the double in Game Week 36, West Ham at home, Leicester away. Now, it's not ideal. I'm not expecting loads of points there. But for someone who's in a structure that doesn't have Harry Kane, there's not many other better options for that double Game Week in 36. You know, if Werner was nailed, maybe. If Iheanacho was nailed, maybe. But I don't think we can rely on them. And obviously, Pukki is so cheap. The problem for my team is Chris Wood is a better option this week, and arguably he's a better option in Game Week 34 as well because he has Norwich. But he is just that much more expensive at 0.8 million, and that does affect my plans quite a lot going forward. So I'm not quite sure what to do. But as it stands right now, I'm leaning towards selling him, because if I keep him and he doesn't play one of the games, that's going to really frustrate me because I was thinking about selling him anyway. So bringing that transfer forward a week just seems like a pretty good play. Obviously, if you're not worried about price rises and falls and stuff like that, you could wait till tomorrow, see if we get any kind of news. It's obviously not the first game. They're playing at 3 o'clock on Saturday. So chances of getting early team news is unlikely. But if a journalist has got something to say about it, maybe, it might just give us an indication of whether he's starting. But ultimately, I think Lacazette is probably a sell. I think for most people, you were looking to downgrade that position anyway. Maybe now's a good time to do it. Okay, so Game Week 33 Captaincy. It feels quite tricky this week because there's a lot of options, and those of you that are on free hit will have even more double Game Week options than the rest of us. So I've kind of put what I feel like are the 6 kind of most talked about, most popular players, and I've put them roughly in order of how I feel about them for captaincy. I say roughly because Fernandes versus Ronaldo, I'm still a little bit torn over. I'll talk about that in just a second. I've not put Maddison on here, who was very popular in the community breakdown poll that I did earlier this week. I just think his minutes would be too much of a concern for me. There is a chance that he plays 60 in both games, gets 120 minutes, and he could be a decent captaincy shout because of the fixtures. But I would just worry that he gets way less minutes than that. And so I've not put him on it. That's kind of my opinion on him. With Fernandes versus Ronaldo, let me talk about Man United one more time, right? And I'm going to play devil's advocate because it's very easy just to sit here and just go with the most recent result. Yeah, Man United are out of form. They're bad against Everton. Don't go for them. Yeah, just go with Spurs. They've just put 4 past Villa. It'd be very easy to sit here and say that. But I feel like people are writing Man United off based on one game against Everton, okay? They've still got a bit to play for, a bit like Leicester, as I said earlier. And yes, the performance against Everton was pretty poor. But as I said in my video earlier this week, right, I go back to that Watford at home game. I don't know how there wasn't goals in that game. Man United are going to get chances against Norwich. Norwich are a team that, yes, and again, we're talking about most recent results. Yes, they've kept 2 clean sheets in a row, but I think Burnley put up like 1.6 or 1.7 XG against Norwich. I don't know how they didn't score, especially that Cornet chance. And if you're a defence that's doing that against Burnley, what are you going to do against Man United? And of course, yes, if Man United play like they did against Everton, they're not going to get those chances. But I think saying that that's now the norm for Man United just based on that one result, it's just not how I would look at it. It wasn't too long ago we were putting 3 past Spurs. And again, Spurs were probably the better team that day, but it just shows what can happen, right? And I think at Old Trafford, things are a little bit different. I know the reverse fixture, Man United versus Norwich. Norwich were pretty good, and Man United had to rely on a Ronaldo penalty to win it. But I just think writing Man United off as if now they're just this awful team in the league when they've got one of the best fixtures you can have all season. I think they're the best captains this week because I don't think Liverpool's a complete write-off either. Liverpool win that game. Liverpool score more goals for sure. Of course, if they're going to win it, they have to score more goals. But could Man United nick 1? Maybe nick 2? An outside best chance? If they do, who's going to be involved? Fernandes or Ronaldo, most likely. So I do think they're the 2 best captains. I think minutes is the problem for me. If you think that Ronaldo plays both games, which I do think there's a high chance of happening because he's just had a rest, or just had a bit of break. It's not like he's just played 2 days ago. He's probably going to play Norwich at home. He's probably going to play Liverpool as well. The only slight doubt in my mind is, could I see a scenario where Rangnick decides to put Fernandes at the 9 against against Liverpool or play Rashford there. Maybe that hasn't happened very often, especially under Ranić recently. But who knows? It could happen. But Fernandes, I think, is more likely than have the runners either side of him, Sancho and Rashford, trying to get him behind. Maybe even Alanga as well, or instead of Rashford. That's the only doubt in my mind. I think Ronaldo's goal threat's better. I think he's on penalties as well when they're both on the pitch. But with Fernandes, you know he's going to play both games, and that is why I've put him above Ronaldo. But we're talking about a gap like this. We're not talking about a gap like this. So I think if, for example, you want to sell a Spurs player to get a Man United player, and you've got Kane, then absolutely you don't, unless it fits your future strategy, you don't make 2 transfers to get Fernandes. You just get Ronaldo, right? And you just captain him. I'm probably going to get Fernandes. I feel like I've talked myself into it at this point. I just think the way I'm kind of looking at it is everyone's writing them off, right, as if they're really bad and Norwich are going to win and Pukki's going to get the points, not Ronaldo. And to me now, that seems like a high upside play. I think when it comes down to it, when we get the figures after the deadline, a lot of people will go Man United captain. A lot of people talk about stuff early in the week that they then won't actually do by the end. So they'll say that Man United are bad, but when it comes down to it, they'll actually probably get them in and captain them. But I don't think it's going to be as high as like 180% effective ownership Salah. I think it's going to be split. And I want to go for that play against Norwich at home. So that's probably what I'm going to do. Outside of Man United, because I've spoken about them a lot, I think I would go double game week. I think Chris Wood's goal threat has been poor this season so far. But I think 2 home games when he's on penalties, historically he's always performed pretty well. I do like him. I think he's going to play both games. The reason I've got him slightly ahead of Saka is because Saka's got that Chelsea game, and that does worry me. And they are missing Partey, they are missing Tierney. They've got issues there. Will Lacazette start? How will that affect the team? Will it make them better? Will it make them worse? They're all just doubts in my mind. And I think Chelsea could win that game, and it could be 2-0. And that is why I've got slight doubts over Saka. What I would say is if I don't bring in Fernandes and I don't bring Chris Wood into my team, Saka will be my captain. So I'm not writing him off. I just think he probably is below those 4. In terms of single game week options, I think there's enough double game weekers where I would almost certainly go for most people's teams a double game weeker over a single game weeker. On paper, I prefer Salah to Son because I just worry. I'm thinking about which one to sell, and I worry more about not having Salah against Man United than I do about not having Son against Brighton. The only thing I will say is Chelsea, Liverpool, and Man City all got to play their FA Cup game before they play their Game Week 33 game, which means Salah has to play against Man City in the FA Cup. Could be an intense game. You don't quite know what's going to happen. That is another thing that would put me off going single game week and maybe actually shifts the balance higher towards Kane and Son over Salah. But on paper, if Salah comes through that unscathed, starts the game against Man United, I think he will outscore Son this week. I just don't think that Brighton is going to be a pushover that a lot of people are expecting. I think they did really well against Villa, but like nearly every shot that Son had went in. I just don't expect that to repeat itself against Brighton. So that's my thinking. I think Man United are the best. I know people don't like that. I'm probably going to bring in Fernandes. I think at this point I've talked myself into it enough. All right, let's get into some of the questions. Now, this is a kind of a Game Week 34 question. The reason I included it is because it might affect what transfers you make this week, okay? So if Chelsea double in Game Week 34, which we know will happen if they beat Crystal Palace in the FA Cup semi-final, who would be your 3 picks? I think right now, Reece James has to be one of them. I think you have to just hope that he plays both games, that he's over any injury concerns. He is their best defender. I don't think there's any debate about that at all. Then I think you have to pick at least one attacker. You could go triple defence, but I think most people are going to go one attacker. I'm going to go with Mount over Havertz. I know Havertz is kind of the more exciting pick. He's a midfielder playing as a number 9. He plays that position very well. He's going to get chances. But I cannot look past the fact that Mason Mount, arguably maybe slightly better for minutes. But not only that, his underlying numbers this season in terms of goals and assists compared to Havertz just are better. And they've been like that over a long period of time. I know Havertz has kind of been in and out of the team earlier on in the season. He's not had like a consistent run. So I wouldn't obviously massively argue against anyone that wants to go for him. But I think right now if I was picking, I'd go for Mount. And then that just leaves one more position. I think the way things are set up, I don't necessarily like the double attack, but I do think it's a big differential. So you could go Mount and Havertz and James if you wanted to. But if you want to go for a second defender, it's probably Rudiger. Maybe Mendy as well, possibly. I do think at some point Kepa will play. So I know Chelsea got loads of fixtures and Mendy looks completely nailed, but I do think Kepa might get a game at some point closer to the FA Cup final if they get through. So Rudiger's probably the other obvious player. But the one I've got there kind of blacked out is Alonso as a differential. Maybe is he coming back into some kind of form? Is Tuchel starting to trust him a little bit more? Possibly. I don't think they've been great with a back four. If they keep playing a back five, Alonso is definitely the best left wing back they've got still in that side while Chilwell is injured. So for those of you like a bit of a pun, I think Alonso at 5.5 could be a decent option. But if we're playing safe, then I think it's Rudiger, Mount and Reece James probably. Okay, so what do I think of Newcastle assets going forward? In particular, do you like Bruno Guimaraes? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I apologise. Could be a nice differential in midfield. Again, I'm thinking like overall most people's squads. I just don't see where he kind of fits into people's kind of current squads. Like how often you'd really want to play him. He is nice and cheap. He's 4.9 million. But I mean, in general for Newcastle players, I think you're getting them for Game Week 33, Game Week 34, and then that's really just it. Okay, because that's a double game week, pretty nice. Norwich away is decent. Then it's Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal. None of them are easy fixtures. Newcastle, I'm sure, are going to be safe by that point if they're not already really safe anyway, right? They're not going to get relegated at this point. And Burnley away is the last game of the season, so possibly if you could bench them up until that point and you've still got them, you might play them. But I just don't think most of them are worth like a long-term transfer. Like I've already said earlier this week, if you're not on a wild card soon in 34 or 35, which I think is when most people will play it, then, like for example, I'm probably going to go for a Man City defender over a Newcastle defender because I don't necessarily need the money. Famous last words. I'm sure I probably will at some point. I'd rather just get the Man City player in, ignore the double game week, and just have them for the rest of the season rather than having that Newcastle player. So for me, the best options are probably Cher in defence, Dubravka in goal, and Chris Wood. I think they are the best options. Bruno Guimaraes maybe, but just takes up a slot in midfield where, like, I don't know about you, but I'm trying to move to 4-5-1. That's the formation I'd love to play until the end of the season. Do I want to be playing Bruno every single week? No. I mean, I've got Salah, Son, Mount, Foden, Maddison, maybe. Do you know what I mean? There's lots of Saka. That's already 6 off the top of my head without even giving it too much thought. To be honest with you, if you're going to go for a cheap midfielder as an enabler, I think Dewsbury Hall's better. He's got more double game weeks. He's cheaper as well. He's 0.5 million cheaper. Unless you were bench boosting this week and you really wanted the Newcastle midfielder, I just wouldn't go there. So for me, Cher, Wood, Dubravka if you really need to make a goalkeeper transfer, but even then I think Schmeichel's a better option. I wouldn't be loading up on too many Newcastle, to be honest. This is a good question because I'm in this exact predicament right now, okay? So should rolling a transfer from Game Week 32, so if this is for anyone that didn't make a transfer last week, should that affect whether you free hit in Game Week 33? Now it should definitely affect your choice because you've got 2 free transfers, so you have to ask yourself, what can you do with them? Is that then worth saving the free hit? So essentially, yes, it should, but if you are only not using the free hit because of that extra transfer, and that's really going to punish you down the line, then no, you shouldn't do it. You should just free hit in Game Week 33. For what it's worth, right now anyway, at the time of recording this, I don't think I'm going to free hit. So this is my team on FPL.team. So if you've not used this website, make sure you do. They've even put a little kind of button for if Chelsea win, this is what the fixtures will look like, which is pretty cool. They put that in today. So let's say, for example, I go through with my transfers. I'm going to put Chris Wood in. I'm probably going to do Son to Fernandes. I've not got that completely locked in yet, but I'm thinking about it. And Tierney to Cancelo, right? They seem like 3 pretty good moves for a -4 because I've got 2 free transfers. This would be my team. Now, it's a little bit of a worry because I've got no bench. I could do Rafinha to Barnes, for example. I can't with these moves. I can't afford Rafinha to Maddison, but I'm probably not going to do it. I'm probably just going to go in without a bench and just hope that everyone plays at least once. And then I go into Game Week 34, and this is with the Man United Chelsea double locked in. Of course, Crystal Palace might win, but just in case, this is how I've got it set up. And I would probably bench Broja, play Rafinha. And with 1 free transfer, this is what the team looks like. The question is, if I free hit in Game Week 33, I only have 1 free transfer going into 34. And basically, the team... So I think basically... Okay, essentially, I think this looks okay. I could play Dubravka or Sarr, okay? If I go to Game Week 33 and reset that and go on to free hit, and then go to the next week where I've got no free hit, I've got 1 free transfer to sort this team out. I've got no extra Man United or Chelsea player. Now, no Man United player in Game Week 34 onwards is not necessarily that bad of a thing. I still don't have Cancelo or Laporte. I've still got Lacazette to deal with. Rafinha's okay for this week, but he's not necessarily okay for game week 35 onwards, although he does have a double in 36. If I had to play him that week, it wouldn't be ideal. It wouldn't be the worst thing. But I've got to deal with Lacazette, so I'd have to put Pukki in, for example, instead of Chris Wood, which I'm not that annoyed about because he is cheaper. I still have to deal with Tierney, so I'd probably want Cancelo. So I could just do that for a -4 and just leave it at that. Is that team that much worse off than the other team I put in? Probably not. Okay, I've lost a transfer. Yes, I don't have Fernandes in there, but to be honest, having Son probably is much better going forward after kind of these next couple of weeks anyway. And the free hit team has hopefully gained me a lot more. So I could free hit. I just think that if I want Mason Mount, for example, this week as well, things do get kind of a little bit trickier, but I don't know. Maybe this is the way to go. So to go back to the question, it should only literally affect you because you've got that extra transfer, so you can probably do a little bit more with it. But it shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. If you think that free hit 33 instead of free hit 36 or free hit 37, which is when most people are looking to use it, is going to gain you kind of 10, 15 plus points, then losing that one transfer, which is worth 4 points, probably doesn't matter too much. For me, I'm still valuing having that free hit a little bit later on. Once the Man City double is locked in, I can really just choose between 36 or 37. I can really think about what transfers I want to do. I'm still favouring not using it this week. But when I come back to this, okay, I've only got one Chelsea player. A lot of wildcards are going to go for 3. But I actually think this looks probably okay. So there is probably a case for me to free hit in 33. I just think that I can probably get enough with the 2 free transfers to not warrant doing it. At least that's where I stand right now. There we go. That is it for this one. If that was useful, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you are new around here as well. I'll have the deadline stream tomorrow, taking us into the Game Week 33 deadline at 11 o'clock UK time. If I activate my free hit, I'll have another video later, but I don't think I'm going to at this part. I think I'm going to use transfers, save it for 36 or 37 and just see what the hell happens. It's going to be a chaotic last 6 game weeks of the season. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you tomorrow. Give it a like, hit subscribe. I'll see you soon.